Good evening, cousins, and welcome to another Menhirs Fate episode. So, as previously stated in the helpfully titled Menhirs Fate starting episode for 2025, I'm actually really excited about this game. I think it's got a lot of really positive things going for it, a positive team behind it, and probably most importantly, the ability to change and develop and evolve, not just from the game runner's point of view, but also from us as players helping it shape what it is. It would be, I think, probably incorrect to say that everything that Empire, well, PD have written for Empire is exactly how it's worked out in the field. No, I think it's quite the opposite. I think it's a case of the players in the field helping to develop those nations and grow them out, and that's what's formed some of the, I would say, the richest culture in the fantasy world I've ever had the chance of playing in. I was going to say something like Witcher, but there's something about Empire that really ticks a lot of boxes. But we're not here to talk about Empire. We're here to talk about Menhirs Fate. So I must fully admit, as usual, disclaimer here, I'm an ill-informed, biased, unreliable source of data. And to try and fix that, I'm going to be looking through their wiki. Specifically, I want to have a look at the overview today. I want to do some episodes on the different nations, and most importantly, on their character creation and combat rules. Because from what I've seen, I think characters are going to be very, streamlined is. I want to say railroaded, railroaded, a little bit more than streamlined, because so for me, streamlined implies like, there's a broadish, thing you can do, and maybe at the extremes of it you can't. Like you look at a train carriage, it's a rectangle. The front is quite literally streamlined for the actual train, and it's got a little nose cone, but that's it. Otherwise, it's almost a rectangle. No, I think you're railroaded. I think you really have to pick what you want to do with your character at Menhirs Fate, from having a preliminary look at some of the rules and how XP is spent, and what's new for me at least is buying the ability to wear certain types of armor. But I am getting ahead of myself. I just want to do a little overview episode for Menhirs Fate. If for whatever reason you haven't heard of it, or more likely, let's just go for a bit of a refresher, because the wiki's been updated in the last few months and it's looking pretty good. So, where to start? When to start? Let's keep it brief. Okay, so the realms. There are 3 realms within the entirety of Menhirs Fate, each of which has 3 nations inside it. Those 3 realms are the Crown Lands, the Commonwealth, and the Sanctuaries. The realms have a shared alliance between each other to hold on and hold back against the enemy. And as a player, you'll choose which nation you're from, and you can camp in character, of course, with that particular nation. I think that's still encouraged to give them all a bit of a cultural stamp, but from what I've understood so far is that inter-nation cooperation is going to be the norm. You're not going to be railroaded into your own factions. So each nation has its own look and feel, culture, problems, and plot. Your nations are going to camp next to each other, and they will be all contained within one. Oh, sorry, I have got that right. Your nations will camp together to form part of your realm. So the 3 realms inside the Crown Lands, for example, will camp next to each other. So we're quite literally going to be neighbours, which is really cute. In each nation, you'll have your nation support team, who are going to be there, and they're going to be, I think, similar to egregores like we've seen at Empire. They're going to be NPCs, guiding new players, especially at E1. There are also referees as well, and have full access to the radios. That's good to see. Cool. So I don't think anything different or new there. Nation support, there are also characters to help you keep immersed in our world and keep you engaged. And again, that checks out in keeping with Menhirs Fate of keeping, I think their aim is to have all of the admin and the like done as easy as possible. As each nation will have a series of roles that players can attain. These will let them interact with certain game processes and enable plot opportunities for other players to engage with in downtime and influence future events. So these roles will be unique to each nation and will have to work with the wider nation to achieve their goals. So we're going to have hats for sure. What those will be, well, I think we're yet to see. but I would be very surprised if there wasn't some kind of senator equivalent, because we're talking internation politics and culture. We've got gods that we're going to cover next, actually. I'm sure there'll be head priests and stuff like that. And then, of course, there's going to be fighting against the darkness. We're guaranteed to get some military roles. So the gods themselves, Menhirs Fate has a pantheon of gods from the sphere of faith that all realms believe in, and each god has aspects of themselves that can come down to Haven. Notice come down to Haven, which is what we call our land, I think, and interact with the player base. Each god has many aspects, and they can help you on your journey. Every player will start with one faith token at each event, which is also the power used by their clerics and paladins. Faith tokens are OC, and they can be rewarded to a cleric for good roleplay. I absolutely adore this concept. I think it's very promising to see a mechanism in place for preaching and for religious interaction. You see sort of Lao being ripped up and used at Empire, and it's a consumable resource, but priest comes along, yada yada yada, makes some symbols in the air, and job's done. Great. You might get a card, but most of the time it's just verbal of, hey, you have this aura on you. But for this, you've got to front load the roleplay. So there's going to be someone on a box preaching about the hearth or the jester. And if you think it's good enough, you can reward them. And I think that's going to push the quality of roleplay up and up and up to give these clerics and paladins these tokens, which are clearly going to be for some kind of rituals or the actual religious spells that they cast. And of course, groups will give their tokens to their friends, which makes sense, right? Because they're like a traveling group outside of Menhirs Fate itself. But for the lay person on the street, you're going to be treated to a bunch of I think anything from a iterant priest to a flagellant. We'll have to wait and see. But I'm really excited about this, and I think it's actually pushing me down that faith route, because I love the idea of preaching, and it's really cool to have some mechanical support for it. Faith tokens can be used in a variety of ways, from healing corrupted souls, smiting enemies, and powering grand ceremonies. So there we go. I probably shouldn't have talked. It's right there. The gods themselves, we've got the Jester, the Hearth, the Muse, the Smith, the Reaper, the Warrior, the Guardian, the Scholar, the Shadow, the Traveller, the Justicar, and the Celebrant. Not going to dive into all of them just yet and what they mean. I don't think they've been fully fleshed out yet. But a nice diverse set of gods, and we've got 12 of them in total. And I wouldn't be surprised, because 12 is divisible by 3, that each, what's the correct terminology? Each realm will have maybe favoured or distaste for certain gods. Not to an element of them being excluded, but we'll have to wait and see if there's cults, if you will, that are more likely in other nations compared to some of the ones in the Crown Lands versus the Commonwealth, for example. So the guilds. Each guild will be run by NPCs who will keep you immersed and help you get involved in any quests. Any character can sign up to be part of these guilds. Each have their own terms and conditions of its membership, and that allows you to access their information and adventures. Guilds will allocate membership cards to guild members that track your progress and help make sure that everyone gets an opportunity to go out on adventures. Guilds generate their own plot, separate from the rest of the nation and world plot. So first up, we've got the Bankers Guild. Your IC location to pick up and drop off your IC items safely and securely. The guild will also be able to handle your nation's projects, as well as your IC queries and admin. So like I mentioned at the start, doing admin IC, bankers, big part of it. Love it. The Treasure Hunters Guild. Join this guild to be sent out on adventures to reclaim lost artifacts, knowledge and treasure, from archaeological digs to mind-bending puzzles through a labyrinth of traps. Also home to other adventures, such as getting information behind enemy lines and stealing from named NPCs or uncovering their identities. The guild will also provide players with a fence, which will be the IC and OC way to drop off stolen items. The Circle of Weavers is the home of the Guardians of the Menhir. Here the Guardians will be able to help you with magical research on how to best use Menhir to weave great works of magic using wild and chaotic word. It's spelt the same way as Wordstone, if any of you are Mordheim fans. And this will give you words of encouragement and knowledge. From here, you may be tasked to go on quests of magical importance and study for the realms. So definitely one for the wizard archetypes there. But the Court of Daggers. Sometimes, some people need to just be taught a lesson. Hexed, or in the most extreme cases, killed. The guild may take you behind enemy lines to eliminate a target, or maybe take down an enemy who has infiltrated Haven. Apart from adventures, the Court of Daggers also acts as the law in Haven, and will send out its members to investigate crimes and distribute appropriate justice. Ooh, that's interesting. Huh. I think I want to pause here on this actually. The first impression you get with Court of Daggers, sometimes people have got to be taught a lesson or killed. It's strong, Assassin's Guild, murderers kind of vibe. It's interesting they've brought in the law as part of it as well. So maybe a bit Judge Dredd-like, with judge, jury, and executioner perhaps. I think that's really cool. The Dawn Hunters Halls, the final guild, are your classic adventures guild. Sign up to take part in a variety of quests that have been put up, from dealing with local disputes to taking out local monsters. The Dawn Hunters Hall will have a board filled with adventures to go on and information including its times, likelihood of combat, difficulty, and rewards. We'll cover this another time as well, but the way I've seen it pitched so far is that you've almost got tiers of adventure, so bronze, silver, gold, and you can only go on silver once you've done some bronze, and only go on gold once you've done some silvers. And the idea is these get more and more lethal as you go, and let's say a bronze level skirmish, you're expected to survive. You might have a few casualties, but meh. With silver, it's dangerous. A handful are definitely going to die. And then with gold, if you get out alive, you are the lucky one. And I really like that level of threat, and seeing the turnover of characters and having genuine danger presented to the game is going to be really refreshing. I still stand by that night skirmishes at Empire are the most lethal thing you can do, but otherwise, as long as it's not dark, most of the time people come out. I am well aware of what happened at E4 with Battle of the Fallen Petals, or 1,000 Petals. That's been the phrase has been coined, where Dawn and Navarre got absolutely mashed in the woods. But outside of that, in a battle where maybe 1,000 fighters are deploying, the casualties are in the tens, which is a very low percentage. But the idea of having skirmishes where you know that your odds of winning it are slim, and then choosing to go out on that and hope to be alive to take part in the reward, I think that's going to be so cool. And really, I think for some professional groups, like the military groups that will go out and form up at Menhir, for them to go out and genuinely say, yeah, we've done a gold level skirmish and we took no casualties, it's going to be genuine bragging rights. So I think that's absolutely awesome to see. And you're never forced to go on. Let's say I've done 100 bronzes. They're never going to say stop doing bronze, go and do some silvers now. You can keep it as sort of high or low threat as you like. Alright, that's guilds. I think Bankers Guild, really cool for IC admin. Awesome. Treasure Hunters Guild, it feels a bit like the Thieves Guild, or like an Information, maybe an Inquisition kind of vibe. Circle of Weavers, Wizards. Court of Daggers, Judge Dredd. And then Dawn Hunters is going to be Monster Slayer, which is dope. Alright, magic. So the world is made up of overlapping and merging spheres, creating the unique material planes landscape. Some spheres flow stronger and faster in some nations than others. Okay, great. So yeah, magic is going to be better for some nations versus others. That gives me the little snifter that perhaps religion will work in the same way. Let's start off with water. Is where all seas, lakes, rivers and rain spring from, including snow and ice. This sphere is where healing waters come from and is needed to sustain life. Earth is where lush forests, fertile land, and mountains spring from, creating the bedrock in which life can rest and be nourished. Fire is where heat, volcanoes, and drive comes from. Without it, wind and water would freeze all life. Air is where the wind, storms, and lightning come from. and it brings great power and change. And then finally, faith. So faith is a magical force. Faith is the sphere of thought. Without it, there would be no free will and intelligent thought in the world. There are 4 further spheres that exist as a result of crossover between 2 other spheres, and they will be available at a later date. And the magic in Menhirs Fate is based on the 5 main spheres of magic, so fire, earth, wind, water, and faith. However, only those that hold conviction, so I think conviction is going to be clerics, paladins, it's your faith skill, only they can access the powers of faith. Powerful rifts from the spheres can open into the material realm, allowing creatures to venture out and explore, but without a constant connection to their sphere, they get dragged back eventually. And since the invasion, the sort of big bad thing at the start of the setting, I think maybe 50 years before we get there, some kind of darkness invades, crumps a load of lands, and we're the only ones left, so that's the invasion. Since then, mass amounts of magic have increased the number of rifts and creatures of other realms, and they are now more common in our world. So I imagine that going and beating up chaos demons is going to be high on the list, and that sounds fucking awesome. Different types of magic they've also included here as well in the overview. Cantrips are battle magic spells that can be used to hinder your foes or heal your allies. Each use will cost you some focus. Some spells can be used at range by spending additional focus. I'm a little bit apprehensive of ranged magic. With these kind of calls, typically I've seen you have to get someone's attention, make eye contact, and yell at them. So it's going to be very close range, and frankly, if on a large battle, or maybe a large skirmish, if you're trying to pull this off, you might as well just go the extra couple of paces and tap them, which is much easier to communicate in combat in my experience. But that's cool to see that we're now getting ranged spells. I do wonder if we're going to get beanbags or tennis balls or something, or maybe not, considering that fireball clip from years ago, but we'll see how that works out. So that was cantrips. A rite is a small ritual that can be enacted in the safety of your camp or in a battlefield to achieve a predetermined outcome, but it will take more time to prepare and can be done solo or as part of a group of weavers / ritualists, and more powerful rites will cost you resources to accomplish. Okay, so that's just a usual ritual, nothing too different there. A ceremony is very similar to a rite, but it's done with those with strong conviction, which is the faith skill. Did I get that right? Yes. You will see clerics and paladins performing these faith ceremonies in place of the resources a magic user would need. Cool. Okay, great. So we use our religious tokens to power this, where mages will need mana or something. Cool. And then finally, we've got weaving, which is the most powerful magic that involves using the menhir itself to create great weavings of weird magic. Let's just go with word. However, with great power comes great danger. Oh, they almost got the quote. With great power comes great danger. Weavers of word and clerics of faith can use the menhir's power. Each weaving is a custom-made ritual made by a group of weavers via a rite or ceremony, and the difficulty of that weaving will be told to you by the guardians. So guardians sounding like NPCs there. So rites and ceremonies, which are the sort of off-battlefield or major battlefield ceremonies. So ceremony/rites, I've got to use the right terminology here. It's a thing. It's a magical thing, whether it comes from magic or from faith. And then those themselves will lead to a blueprint for a weaving, which is a giga spell, and that's going to have to be done back in Menhir itself. Cool. So you've got the small, medium, and large varieties of magic, and medium can be occupied by magic itself or by faith. Okay, cool. So that's it for the overview. I think lots of interesting things to dive into. That's my first time actually reading it. Yeah, the gods don't have links on, which is a shame, because I think that'd be really cool to investigate, but something like the warrior, I don't think that's going to be hard to imagine what that does. The hearth, it's kind of cool. I wonder what like homely kind of things we're going to get, or maybe family orientation, or groups, or friendship, or something like that as a touch point. I think the guilds are outstanding. From what I've understood so far, is the the game is very much geared towards PvE more than PvP. So these 5 guilds, I think, are going to be pretty much like picking a nation. You'll pick your own nation, and that'll determine your costume and your culture. But then going into these guilds, they'll develop their own cultures, their own traditions, and the like. And into guild rivalry, I think would be really cool. Achieving what? I don't know, but I think there's a lot of potential spicy friction to enjoy as a role player. And I do like what they've done with looping together faith magic and magic itself, where it's just another, instead of having a whole mage system and a whole faith system, they've just looped it together and say, yep, this is the magic system, get used to it. And if you have if you're a faith-based character like a priest, then congratulations, you're basically a faith mage and follow the usual rules. I think that's really cool from an admin point of view and an understanding point of view as well. They don't have to build 2 separate sets of mechanics, it's just one. But of course, paladins are going to get access to different spells that are going to be perhaps more spiritual in nature than fireball. Alright, that's me done for now. Thank you for listening, and I'm looking forward to reading some more of the Menhirs Fate wiki with you and giving you my ill-informed, shitty opinions. But until next time, dear listeners, enjoy your evenings.